Anyone can recommend an arbitrary tech stack. It's easy. You pluck technologies you've heard of out of the air and announce with certainty that's the tech stack you should use. Bonus points if what you mention is currently in vogue. However, generally speaking, what tech stack do I use is the wrong question. The tech stack you should choose to use should be the answer you come to through asking the right questions. The tech stack, or the right tech stack, is a balance. Here's what you should be considering when choosing a tech stack. What's simple? Always start with the most simple solution you can possibly get away with. Generally, building software is expensive and it's difficult. And despite what the LinkedIn oracles say about generative AI, this is unlikely to change anytime soon. It's an open secret that even excellent programmers can write awful code. Why make it any harder for them than it needs to be? Whatever code you write will invariably become complex, so you need to keep it as simple as you can for as long as you can, providing you balance the rest of the points that we're covering off here. What's adaptable? For most products to be successful in the marketplace, you need to be able to rapidly adapt them and change them based upon user feedback. Even if you don't need to compete in the marketplace, your product requirement will change over time. Product requirements always change. Whatever tech stack you choose must be able to quickly and easily adapt to these changes as they come up. If you create something that cannot be easily adapted, it will likely either fall behind the market or become riddled with technical debt. A good measuring stick for this is how often can you deploy to a product. Being able to deploy software updates throughout the working day without breaking anything would suggest the product is adaptable. Not being able to deploy anything for breaking something or fear of breaking something would suggest it's not very adaptable. What's scalable? You want it to be possible to scale your software. Right now it might only be 5,000 lines of code. In the future it could be 200 times that. Likewise, you may only have 50 users now, but in the future you could have many, many more. You must make sure that your tech stack does not get in the way of scaling. Question: what happens if the code base grows substantially? What happens if the user base explodes? Can the proposed tech stack handle this, or are you going to have to go back to the drawing board if it happens? Which tech stack has clearly defined best practices and guidelines? Developers really like to invent their own ways of doing things. It can make it particularly difficult when it comes to building software that lasts more than a couple of years. Frameworks and services that have clearly defined practices can be advantageous in this regard, as they give a clear way of working that any developer can follow. Take AWS and Azure, for example. They have clearly defined best practices and offer training pathways to ensure developers know how to apply these techniques. This is invariably better than just letting developers inventing their own ways of doing things. However, this is of course based on the assumption you can confirm best practices are actually being followed. What meets the regulatory requirements? Security and data privacy are of the utmost importance. Gone are the days you could sling together web-based SaaS and fill it with data that identifies users but not take security seriously. There are very real consequences to data leaks. As such, any tech stack must meet relevant regulatory requirements. You wouldn't be the first to scrap a whole software project nearing completion because of a regulatory requirement that was not planned for from the outset. And before you say, there's no sensitive data on our project, remember that if you have a website and that website has a contact form and the message sent from that form are intercepted, in the UK, that's a reportable data leak. Most software will be bound by regulatory requirements, even if you are currently ignorant of them. Find out what they are and take it into account when planning the tech stack. You need to be able to implement the tech stack that you choose. It's one thing for somebody to tell you what tech stack to use. You have to be able to follow through on it. You have to be comfortable working with it, and you need to be able to secure the development resource to build it. Costs can be a big factor in feasibility. So remember, certain technologies, the human resource required to build is higher. For example, you could potentially build something in PHP for 2/3 of the price you could build something in React due to the relative cost of the staff required to work with these technologies. Remember, there is no such thing as a best tech stack. There are plenty of people who tell you with certainty the best tech stack is X. However, everyone has their own biases. Developers, online communities, universities, business advisors, they all have their own opinions fueled by their own self-interest. At the end of the day, everyone tends their own garden. Do not forget it. The reality is there is not a one-size-fits-all best tech stack, and you should be wary of those that suggest there is. Remember, the best tech stack for you is always the balance of many considerations, not a one-size-fits-all answer.